All right, 5-3, solving trig equations. All right, so what exactly is a trig equation? Well, trig equations are equations where the variable is inside a trig expression. Okay, trig equations are equations where the variable is inside a trig expression. So what does that look like? For instance, say the sine of x equals 0. All right, so this is a trig equation, just like much of what you saw today were trig equations. And then something like cosine squared x minus 3 equals 0. All right, so in this video, we're actually going to be solving for the value of the angle. So we're going to be solving for x. All right, just as a refresher, oops, I can't spell. All right, remember you have your important angles were 0, pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3, pi over 2, pi. We really don't need to go much further than that. Okay, so the sine, remember, is the x value, the y value of your angle, and the cosine is the x value of your angle. So if you remember my little trick, they're all divided by 2. They're all some number divided by 2. Okay, and then the top, with sine, you start at 0, so square root of 0, and count up with the square roots. Okay, and then at pi, we're back to 0. Okay, this one's not as important. All right. Now, same thing here. They're still all over 2. And of course, remember, some of these can simplify down. Like the square root of 1 over 2 is 1/2. Square root of 4 over 2 is 1. Square root of 0 over 2 is, of course, 0. All right, I'm just showing you the pattern here. And with cosine, it's the opposite of sine. So it goes backwards. So square root of 4, square root of 3, square root of 2, square root of 1, square root of 0. All right, so make sure you remember these, because when we're solving these out, we're going to be getting some of these values. And if you remember these, you can quickly go up. So say your cosine of x equals square root of 3 over 2. You go up, boom, pi over 6. Okay. All right, so let's get into our problem. Let's solve for x. Okay. We have the sine of x equals 1 over 2. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to go back to that chart, okay, which is right here, and find out where the sine equals 1/2. Where if you look, the sine equals 1/2 at pi over 6. Okay, so the answer for for x is pi over 6. Now, if you remember, sine is positive in 2 different quadrants, right? You have your grid and you have ASTC. Remember, sine is positive in both quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. If you had an angle that was pi over 6, it'd be right here, pi over 6, with your sine value of 1/2 and your cosine value of square root of 3 over 2. Now also, if you had a pi over 6 degree angle here, it would also be have a sine value of 1/2 as well. So now, not only do we need to write down pi over 6, we need to write down whatever this angle is, starting from here and coming this way. Well, if it's pi over 6 less than pi, that means it would be 5 pi over 6. All right. Now, this would be your complete answer if I asked you to go on the interval from 0 to 2 pi. Okay, which for this video, we're going to stick with between 0 and 2 pi. But we will get into writing generic solutions, meaning, yes, pi over 6 and 5 pi over 6 work, but so do other angles. For instance, a full circle is 12 pi over 6. So 13 pi over 6 would work as well. All right. So that's why I'm limiting this to 0 over 2 pi, so we just get, a few definite answers. All right. We'll get in later how to get all the solutions. Okay. But for now, we're just going to get solutions between 0 and 2 pi. All right. So let's look at another one. We have 2 times the cosine of x plus 1 equals 0. Now, if you want, some of y'all, I showed you how you can replace the cosine of x with just a single variable. So say, I'm going to change the variable so you don't get confused. 2y plus 1 equals 0. And if you want to do that, substitute y for the cosine, solve it for y, and then just put cosine of x back in. You can do that if you want to. They're going to solve the same way. Okay, we're going to subtract 1 from both sides. So you have 2 times the cosine of x equals negative 1. And then we're going to divide by 2. So our cosine of x equals negative 1 half. All right. Let's go to ASTC. We know cosine is positive in the first quadrant and the last quadrant. All right. But now, if you notice here, we have a negative number. All right. So we want to find out where the cosine is equal to negative 1 half. Well, it would be in these two quadrants. Okay. If you want, you can flip back to that chart at the beginning. The cosine of 1 half is right here, so it's pi over 3. So now we have our reference angle, which is going to be here. Okay, pi divided by 3. So we also need an angle here, a reference angle here, of pi over 3 as well. And we also know it's negative in this quadrant, so we need another reference angle here of pi over 3 as well. Now, our answer is not going to be in the first quadrant. I just drew this because that was our reference angle. What we're going to be looking for is this angle as well as this whole angle, because these two will have a cosine of negative 1 half. Okay, this is why that section on reference angles was so important, because since we know our reference angle is pi over 3, we can quickly figure out what these angles are. Okay, because we know about reference angles, we know this is going to have to be pi over 3. So since a half circle is 3 pi over 3, we know that our angle here is going to be 2 pi over 3. All right, and since this is 3 pi over 3 and we're adding another one, it's also going to be 4 pi over 3. Okay, so you kind of see how this is going. You solve, so it's just the cosine, sine, tangent, whatever trig function x equals a number on the other side. Okay, kind of like we did here. We solved it for our trig function. Okay, 2 cosine x plus 1, we solved it down, cosine x equals negative 1 half. That's what you want to do. You want to solve for your trig function. Then you go to your unit circle. And remember, for now, we're limiting it between 0 and 2 pi. So you go to your unit circle and you figure out what angles on this unit circle equal negative 1 half. Okay, so first thing you want to do is find your reference angle in the first quadrant. Okay, so pretend it's positive, whether it's negative or not. Find out what your reference angle is, then go to the appropriate quadrants and figure out what the angle in that quadrant is that has that reference angle. All right, I'm going to have you try one now. I want you to solve for x, and this is a u try. Okay, you have 2 times the sine of x plus the square root of 2 equals 0. Just go ahead and pause the video, take a few moments, see if you can work this out and get this figured out. All right, hopefully you got this figured out. Remember, we want to solve for sine of x, so we want everything on the other side and sine of x by itself. First thing we want to do, subtract the square root of 2. So 2 times the sine of x equals negative square root of 2. Now we're going to divide by 2. So the sine of x equals negative square root of 2 over 2. All right, if we go back to ASTC, we know that sine is negative in these two in the bottom two quadrants, and we know that if you go back to the chart, the angle that has a sine value of square root of 2 is pi over 4. All right, so we know we're going to have a reference angle here of pi over 4 and a reference angle here of pi over 4. Now we have to figure out what these two angles are. Well, if straight out here is 4 pi over 4 because it's pi and I just wrote it in terms of pi over 4, we're adding another pi over 4, so we know x will have to be 5 pi over 4. Okay, and then here we know all the way around is going to be 8 pi over 4. Whoops, I was thinking 2 pi, and that's sorry about that. And we know this is 2 pi, and we're pi over 4 less than that, so we know our other angle is going to have to be 7 pi over 4. All right. So as you can see here, we're just simply solving for our trig function. In this case, the sine of x. We solved it for sine of x equals negative square root of 2 over 2. You go back to the chart I gave you. You figure out where, what angle is this, what reference angle is associated with the square root of 2 over 2 for the sine value. Once you figure that out, next thing, if it's positive, you figure out what two quadrants it's going to be in. If it's negative, you do the same thing, figure out which two quadrants it's going to be in. Draw in your reference angles that you found in the first quadrant. Then go back and actually figure out what the actual measure is starting from 0. All right? And that's exactly what we did here. This is starting at 0. We came around here, figured out this was 5 pi over 4. And then for the second one, we started here at 0 again, came all the way around, and figured out that that was 7 pi over 4. Okay? All right, so tomorrow in class, I'm going to have y'all work on some more of these problems. Okay? So just, make sure you understand how we're doing this. You can go back through the video and watch it as many times as you need to. So just make sure you're ready when you come to class, because we're going to work on some of these tomorrow. See you tomorrow.